Hey everybody, it's Coach here from Fire Fitness Fun Luck. Tonight I want to talk about your MyZone, right? So I love your MyZone. Starting this off real easy. I love MyZones. I have one. I wear it all the time. It's a really, really useful tool. If you don't have one, I recommend getting one, right? What it does is measures your heart rate and compares it to a estimated max, all right? And before I get into anything, I just want to say real quickly, ACSM, the American Academy of Sports Medicine, defines vigorous exercise as 77% of your max heart rate, right? So, if you are in the upper green zone on your MyZone, you're working vigorously according to ACSM. And that's awesome, right? Basically, most everything we do at Fire brings you to vigorous exercise. That's great, right? Moving on. I said just a second ago, it takes your estimated max heart rate and compares it to your current heart rate. Estimated max heart rate, right? It doesn't actually take you to your 100% max and finds it out itself. It doesn't do that. Nobody does that. I don't do that. I don't want to do that, right? Your doctor might do that, and he might have a bunch of electrodes glued to your chest, and he might have a nurse or a sonographer sitting there with a probe ready to shove down your throat, right? I don't do that. Doctors do that. I'm not a doctor, right? It's not actually really safe to do that. I don't want 100% of your heart. Things happen. Bad things can happen at near 100% of your heart. I don't want that. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want you to deal with that, right? Nobody wants to deal with that. We're not going to deal with that, right? So, if you see on the MyZone that you're at 99% and you feel really, really ill, it might behoove you to just take a second and take a couple deep breaths. That's fine. That's fine. And if someone's screaming at you to go to 100 and you don't feel like you physically can, then don't. Just take a second, right? Because 40 seconds in the gym, because it would only be a maximum of 40 seconds, is not worth a trip to the ER. Okay? Throwing that out there. Yeah. Anyways, your MyZone estimates your max heart rate, right? It's a number, right? It's an individualized number, and it could be very different to what you know what I mean? Your max heart rate correlates with a lot of things, but sometimes it doesn't. You might be weird, and it just happens. There's nothing bad about that. There's nothing good about that. Your max heart rate doesn't indicate any good physical fitness. It doesn't indicate bad physical fitness. It just is a number, and it generally goes down as you get older, right? It just is what it is, right? Generally, your MyZone is good at estimating it, but it might not be. That being said, if your max heart rate is actually much higher than what your MyZone predicted, you're gonna have a very hard time getting in the higher zones, right? So just don't compare yourself to everybody else, and know that if you're at 80% and you feel like you're dying, then you're at 80% and you feel like you're dying, and that is what it is. You're getting 4 reps per minute anyway, and that's great. So cool. You know what I mean? And if it's much higher, it's going to be harder to get in the higher zones. And your MyZone is never going to self-correct because you're never going to get to the 98% or whatever you have to be at for it to go up. Brings me to another point. If your MyZone adjusts because you were working at 98% or whatever for more than 40 seconds, because that's the threshold, it adjusts because it's wrong. Okay? Now your MyZone became more accurate. Don't get angry with it, right? You get that email, don't message them back. Don't have them change it back. Just deal with it. Now your tool is more useful, right? That's good. That's good for you, right? I'd rather have a sharp knife than a dull knife. And I don't want to take my sharp knife and dull it just because I liked how it was before, right? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, it just got better. It's good, right? That's a good thing. All right, last thing. Your MyZone doesn't take into account your resting heart rate, right? What does that mean? Say my resting heart rate is 80%, my target heart rate is 120 beats per minute. If I have 40 beats per minute of a difference from 80 to 120. Okay, awesome. What if my resting heart rate was 60 beats per minute, but my estimated max was about the same. Therefore, my target heart rate is still 120. Well, guess what? Now I have to go up 60 beats per minute to get to the same target heart rate. So 80 is 40 beats per minute difference. Now 60 to 120 is 60 beats per minute. I have to move up more than I did if I have a higher resting heart rate to get to the same intensity. Right? Your mind, it's wrong. Basically, it's wrong. It's not the same intensity, but your MyZone will say it is the same intensity in that situation, right? It's just, there is a way to measure intensity where it takes into account your resting heart rate. Your MyZone doesn't do that, and it's fine, right? Max heart rate is generally fine, right? However, if your heart conditions itself to start lower, conditions itself to have a resting heart rate that's lower, or doesn't have to beat as hard to work as hard to give your muscles the same amount of blood, then it's going to be harder to get in those higher zones. Your heart gets stronger by beating harder and beating slower, right? A slower heart is a stronger heart. So if you get a MyZone, you put it on and you're like in the red all the time, and then all of a sudden one day you're not. That's good. It's really, really good. That's awesome. Don't complain about that. Stop complaining about that. Just recognize that you're more fit. And maybe what you're capable of doing is gone up. Because your heart's beating slower, now your muscles have more blood available to them. Now your muscles can actually work harder, right? Maybe that's the case. Maybe you can lift more weights, or maybe you can just work faster because your heart is a little bit stronger and can keep up. So maybe you can push yourself a little bit more, or maybe your heart is just really strong. So bottom line, give me everything you got. If you feel ill, take a second. And if you struggled to get in the higher MEP zones, there's probably a reason for it. And don't get mad at your MyZone. Okay? If you have any questions about your specific situation, why don't you ask your trainer? Ask me, ask Missy, ask your trainer. If you have any general questions about MyZone, just post it in the comments below. I'd love to see them. But yeah, that's all I got, right? Bottom line, MyZones are great. Keep wearing them. Keep doing you. If you don't have one, buy a MyZone. Yeah, I plugged them. Why not, right? Yeah. Okay, that's all I got. You guys have a great one. I'm sorry this was a long video, but, you know, I thought it was important. So, yeah. See you.